We begin with the breaking news. A second juror in the George Zimmerman murder trial breaking her silence and showing her face, but not revealing anything more than a first name of Maddie for fear of her safety. In an exclusive interview with ABC News, the only minority on the all-female panel says she was the holdout juror that favored second-degree murder. But in the end, the evidence wasn't there to convict, and she's now wrestling with whether or not she made the right decision. Let's bring in our legal panel. Joining us, our CNN legal correspondent, Jean Casares, CNN legal correspondent and criminal defense attorney, Mark Nijame, and our legal analyst, Lisa Bloom. Guys, thanks very much. Let me read to you the excerpt of what this woman named Maddie, what she had to say, the black Hispanic woman, the only minority on the jury. George Zimmerman got away with murder, but you can't get away from God. And at the end of the day, he's going to have a lot of questions and answers he has to deal with, but the law couldn't prove it. Jean, what do you make of that?
You know, I find so much fascinating in what she said. First of all, she said that if you do not have the proof that he killed him intentionally, you cannot find him guilty. For second-degree murder, an element is not intent to kill. That is first-degree murder. Also, she said that she wished the charges, she didn't think they should have even have been brought. Does that mean that she doesn't believe there was probable cause he committed any crime? And she never addresses self-defense, because that was such a focal point in the case, not only for the defense, also for the prosecution. They had the burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt there was not self-defense.
Lisa, what do you think?
Well, I think there's no question that George Zimmerman shot Trayvon Martin intentionally. According to his own statements, he intentionally pulled out the gun, pulled the trigger. It has a long trigger, and there was testimony at the trial that it wasn't done accidentally. As Jean says, the only question is self-defense. It's so disturbing, I have to say, to hear a juror speak after the fact about her regrets, that perhaps she should have held out, that perhaps it was murder, when she had every opportunity in the jury room to voice how she felt, to stand her ground in the jury room if she wanted to do that, and ultimately she chose not to.
She chose not to. She chose to vote not guilty like the other 5 women. Mark, go ahead. When you heard this juror now explain, Maddie, as she's called, explain her rationale, her decision-making, what did you think?
Well, the parts that I'm extracting from it, I want to compliment about. Look, the trials are not moral tribunals in the United States. You're supposed to follow the law and apply the law to the evidence that was presented. So, many cases, it happens every day in American jurisprudence. People have a gut feeling. They believe that somebody, in fact, committed a crime, and they may be everything from child molesters to murderers to robbers and everything in between. But you have to apply the facts and you have to apply the evidence to the law. And what she's saying is, although morally she believed what was done was wrong, she listened to the jury instructions, she read them, she indicated there was something like a small book, I think there are 27 pages actually, and she applied the law and could not in fact find that there was she found that there was reasonable doubt. I'm real nervous that when we start talking about second-guessing what jurors do, look, there's a chemistry. There's a soup that gets made when jurors get together. There's a dynamic that takes place. So people walk into a jury room with a preconceived belief, but then when they talk with each other, when they evaluate the evidence, when they listen to the facts or they address it from a different perspective, then they cumulatively come up with a verdict, and that's what happened here. And it happens all the time. 16 hours of deliberation means that they were deliberating.
But, Jean, I want you to compare what this juror, B29, as she was called, said, as opposed to B37, the other juror who has now spoken publicly, what she told Anderson Cooper, about 10 days or so ago. Listen to this.
What did you think of George Zimmerman?
I think George Zimmerman is a man whose heart was in the right place, but just got displaced by the vandalism in the neighborhoods and wanting to catch these people so badly that he went above and beyond what he really should have done.
All right, Jean, go ahead and compare these 2 women. One saying that George Zimmerman got away with murder, but there was not enough evidence to convict him. Another one giving a little bit different nuance there.
You know, the jury determines the issues of fact, and I think these jurors are diametrically opposed as to what they believe factually was the case. But they had to look at The juror that Anderson interviewed was one that was dominant in that room to sway then this other juror that believed he had committed murder. And the jury instructions, I think, were pivotal in all this. You know, remember, this new juror that has come forward, she's a mother of 8, and she has one child that's 18, one child that is 15, and then younger twins, but right around the age of Trayvon Martin. And I think emotionally right now because she is a distraught woman.
Lisa, she also goes on to say this juror B29, she tells Robin Roberts of ABC News this. She says, "That's where I felt confused, where if a person kills someone, then you get charged for it. But as the law was read to me, if you have no proof that he killed him intentionally, you can't say he's guilty." So even though she was the holdout, she thought maybe second-degree murder would be appropriate. In the end, she went along with the 5 other women and acquitted.
And you know what's fascinating to me? We know that initially in the jury deliberations, there were 3 to convict and 3 to acquit. One who wanted to convict of second-degree murder, who we now know is this woman. And we talked a lot during the trial about the racial makeup of this jury. 5 white women, 1 minority, and that's the one who's speaking out now. And you can see how important it is. In this case, there's no question that there's a huge racial disparity in terms of the way people viewed this case from the beginning. And the fact that there were so few minority faces on that jury, I think you can see how it played out now in terms of the way that they voted. This was the one who was most in favor of convicting on the top charge. And ultimately, there was only 1 minority voice on that jury. There was just not enough to carry the day.
Mark, go ahead, wrap this up.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I was complaining from the onset that the jury did not have more minority representation, but when you have a county that's only 11% African-American and 30% of that comes from Sanford, the odds of getting an African-American on that jury were very slim to begin with. So then we have this cultural divide, which we're all, following day by day now.
Mark Nijame, Lisa Bloom, Gene Casares, we're going to continue this conversation. Thanks very much. We're going to have more on what this juror is now saying about the case. That's coming up at the top of the hour here in the Situation Room. Up next, the woman at the center of Anthony Weiner's revived sexting scandal, breaking her silence in a brand new interview, and she isn't holding back.
The exact wording was that he's an argumentative, perpetually horny, middle-aged man. And at the time, I was like, oh, no, you're not. But yes, he is.